Welcome back, everyone. Today we're doing a deep dive into 5W,
5W.
a traditional herbal supplement that's meant to support women's reproductive health.
Okay.
Um, we've got the product information and the ingredient list right in front of us, so we're going to take a look and break down what these herbs are,
Cool.
their traditional uses, and how they might benefit women today.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating how traditional medicine, like with this deep understanding of plants, kind of paved the way for how we think about women's health today
Right.
and how we approach it.
Yeah, and I think that's what's really cool about this deep dive,
Yeah.
is that we're going to see those connections and how those are all intertwined.
Yeah, for sure.
So the product info says that 5W is marketed as a natural supplement to support women's reproductive systems throughout various life stages, even in like the final weeks of pregnancy.
Wow.
So what are the ingredients that make this formula so special?
Well, 5W features a blend of herbs that have been really well known for their use in women's health, especially in traditional medicine systems.
Okay.
You might even recognize a few of them.
Yeah, the first one listed is black cohosh. Now, I've heard of this one before. Isn't that the one that's used for, like, menopausal symptoms?
You're right. Black cohosh has been used for a long time to ease menopausal discomfort, especially hot flashes. And actually, recent studies have suggested that it might even have an effect on estrogen levels,
Really?
which could help explain why it's so effective.
That's cool.
It's also traditionally used for menstrual discomfort as well,
Right.
possibly because of its effects on hormone balance.
Oh, wow. So there's a possible link between the traditional use and then what modern science is now finding.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
exact.
What about this next one? Squavine.
Squavine.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Squavine is particularly interesting because it was used by Native Americans to support female reproductive health and to prepare the body for childbirth.
Oh, wow.
They traditionally used it to tone the uterine muscles,
Okay.
which might also explain why it could potentially ease menstrual cramps as well.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So black cohosh for hormonal balance, squavine for, like, preparing the body for childbirth.
Yes.
Okay, what's next on the list?
Next up is dong quai, sometimes called the queen of herbs in Chinese medicine
Whoa.
when it comes to women's health.
Queen of Herbs. That's quite a title.
It is.
Why is Dong Quai viewed with such high regard?
Well, dong quai has a reputation for being a very powerful herb
Okay.
for hormonal balance,
Right.
which, as we know, is super key for women's well-being, throughout their lives.
Right.
And so it's traditionally used to address PMS symptoms and provide overall support for the reproductive system.
It seems like hormonal balance is a recurring theme here.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, now we have Butcher's Broom.
Butcher's broom.
I have to admit, that name does not exactly scream women's health to me.
I can understand that. But butcher's broom actually have a history of use in supporting circulatory health.
Oh, okay.
And it's thought to help maintain healthy blood vessels, which is super important for just overall well-being,
Yeah.
including reproductive health.
Right.
And historically, it's also been used to support the urinary system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So maybe not just for butchers after all.
Yeah.
All right, the last ingredient on the list is red raspberry leaf.
Red raspberry leaf.
I feel like I've heard this one, like, associated with pregnancy.
You're spot on.
Oh, correct.
Red raspberry leaf has been used for centuries to support the female reproductive system, and it's believed to be especially helpful during labor,
Okay.
possibly because of its astringent properties, which can help tone tissues.
So we've got a real lineup of herbs here,
They do.
each with this long history of use in, like, various aspects of women's reproductive health. This 5W formula seems to be drawing on a lot of traditional wisdom.
Yeah, for sure.
What can you tell us about where these ingredients are sourced from? Does the product information say anything about that?
It does, and this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
The product information emphasizes the use of wild harvested ingredients.
Oh, cool.
And they actually specifically mention that they source their raspberry leaves from the Albanian mountains,
Wow.
which suggests, a real focus on quality and natural sourcing practices.
Wild harvested herbs from the Albanian mountains.
Yeah.
There's something almost magical about that.
It does sound very idyllic.
It does.
Yeah.
But before we get, too carried away,
Sure.
let's talk about safety.
Yeah.
You need to emphasize that, especially with herbal supplements.
Absolutely. The information sheet very clearly states that pregnant or lactating women should consult with their healthcare provider before using 5W,
Right.
or any other supplement for that matter.
Of course.
It's always best to get personalized advice from your doctor.
I couldn't agree more. Now, I think this is a really good time to bring you in to help us connect the dots.
Okay.
We've learned about each of these herbs, and their traditional uses, but how does all of that tie in to what we understand about women's health from like a more scientific perspective?
That's a great question. And it's actually fascinating how many of those traditional uses actually do align with our modern scientific understanding of women's health.
Okay.
For instance, we now know that hormonal fluctuations can contribute to a ton of different symptoms, from menstrual cramps to mood swings to hot flashes during menopause.
So the traditional uses of these herbs, like easing those symptoms,
Yeah.
might actually have a basis in their ability to help balance those hormone levels.
Precisely. It's a great example of how traditional knowledge, often holds these valuable insights that we can then further explore and sometimes even validate through scientific research.
It's like a bridging, like an ancient wisdom with modern science.
Exactly.
Which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
I'm curious, you mentioned earlier that traditional medicine often takes a more holistic view of health.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Of course. So traditional medicine systems often consider the interconnectedness of the mind, body, and spirit when approaching health. And I think that this deep dive into 5W is actually giving us a little peek into that perspective.
Yeah.
And how natural remedies could play a role in supporting a woman's overall well-being.
I think that's a really valuable takeaway.
Yeah.
But it's important for us to remember that we're not doctors.
Of course.
And we're not making any medical recommendations.
Right. It's crucial for our listeners to think critically about the information that we're presenting.
Yeah.
And to consult with their healthcare providers to make informed decisions about their health.
Right, because what works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly.
It's very individual.
Totally.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
The individual herbs in 5W, their traditional uses, the sourcing, and even touched on the connection to modern science.
Yeah.
But before we move on, I want to leave our listeners with a question to consider.
I'm all ears.
So we've talked about how these herbs have been used traditionally for women's health. But I'm wondering, how does understanding those historical uses inform our current understanding of women's health?
Oh.
It seems like there's a lot we can learn from the past, even as we continue to make advancements in modern medicine.
That's a really great question to consider.
Yeah.
It reminds us that knowledge is always evolving and there's always more to learn. And perhaps this deep dive will kind of spark some curiosity and encourage everyone to do a little exploring on their own.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that thought. Recognizing that we're not just like starting from scratch.
Right.
And that we can build on this foundation of traditional knowledge that already exists.
Yeah, it's like we're having this conversation across time with the people who came before us and who discovered these things. Okay, so we've got this traditional herbal formula, 5W, designed to support women's reproductive health in this holistic way. We talk about the individual ingredients and their uses.
Yeah.
But the product information also highlights some specific benefits.
Right.
So let's dive into those.
Okay, so let's see. It says that 5W is intended to promote the toning of the uterine tissues in preparation for childbirth.
That makes sense, especially with what we learned about like squavine and red raspberry leaf being traditionally used to kind of tone and strengthen the uterus.
Right. And it also mentions supporting circulation and soothing uterine spasms.
Okay.
And even those uncomfortable Braxton Hicks contractions.
Oh, right.
And this aligns with the historical uses of butcher's broom, which is believed to support healthy blood vessels. And then black cohosh, which is often used to ease menstrual cramps, which are essentially uterine spasms as well.
It's all coming together.
It is.
So the formula seems to address a range of potential issues that are all related to the uterus and reproductive health.
Exactly. And it also specifically mentions that 5W is designed to support a woman's body during the last 5 weeks of pregnancy to help kind of facilitate a smoother delivery.
Oh, wow.
And then a healthy postpartum recovery as well.
So it's not just about like addressing problems. It's about promoting optimal health and well-being during pregnancy.
Yeah, exactly.
And postpartum.
Supporting the body's natural processes.
Yeah.
And speaking of support, let's not forget the potential benefits for menstrual discomfort as well.
Oh, right. The product information mentions that 5W is traditionally used to help relieve menstrual discomfort, like cramping, spasms, and other irregularities,
Yeah.
which that has to be a welcome relief for many women.
Absolutely. Menstrual discomfort is so common, and it can really impact a woman's quality of life.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So finding safe and effective ways to manage those symptoms is really important.
It sounds like 5W could offer some relief for those who are experiencing those issues.
Yeah.
But it's not just about periods, right?
Right.
There's also mention of potential benefits for hormonal balance overall.
Yes, it specifically mentions supporting healthy hormone balance to maintain what they call hormone comfort.
Hormone comfort.
Hormone comfort.
Okay.
And this is where herbs like dong quai and black cohosh come into play, known for their traditional use in hormonal balance.
It's remarkable how these traditional uses
Yeah.
are reflected in the product's, like, stated benefits.
I know.
It's like a direct link to the wisdom of those who came before us.
It really highlights how understanding that historical context of these herbs can give us a deeper appreciation for their potential applications today.
For sure. Okay, we've got a good grasp on the intended benefits of 5W.
Okay.
What about dosage?
Yes.
How much are people supposed to take?
Right.
Are there any safety considerations?
So the product information recommends taking 2 capsules 3 times daily with a meal.
Okay.
And they emphasize, again, that pregnant or lactating women should consult their healthcare practitioner before taking this or any other dietary supplement.
Right. We did touch on that earlier, but it's worth repeating.
Yes, that's
Always best to err on the side of caution
yeah,
and get personalized advice from your doctor,
for sure.
especially when you're pregnant or breastfeeding.
Absolutely. And it's also just important to remember that everyone's body is different.
Right.
And so what works for one person might not work for another.
Exactly.
So it's all about kind of finding what's right for you and your own individual needs.
That's a really important point.
Yeah,
We're talking about a specific product here.
right.
But the bigger takeaway is to approach any supplement
Yeah.
with a critical eye
Yes.
and involve your healthcare provider
Yeah.
in the decision-making process.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's about empowering yourself with knowledge and making informed choices about your health and well-being.
Now, I want to circle back to something we mentioned earlier,
Okay.
the wild harvested ingredients.
Yes.
The product information really emphasizes this, particularly the raspberry leaves sourced from the Albanian mountains.
Right.
What's the significance of wild harvesting?
Well, it really speaks to the product's commitment to quality and sustainability.
Okay.
Wild harvested herbs are often thought to be more potent
Okay.
because they're growing in their natural environment without the use of any pesticides or herbicides.
So it's not just about the type of herb,
Yeah.
but also about where it comes from and how it's grown.
Right, exactly. The origin and the cultivation methods can have a huge impact on the quality and the potency of that final product.
Right.
And so in this case, the emphasis on wild harvesting suggests a real focus on kind of harnessing the natural power of these plants.
I love that phrase.
Yeah.
Harnessing the natural power of plants.
It's power.
It sounds almost primal.
It does, doesn't it? It connects us back to that ancient relationship between humans and nature.
Yeah.
And relying on the earth's bounty for healing and well-being.
I'm feeling more connected to nature myself,
Yeah,
just thinking about those wild raspberry leaves growing in the Albanian mountains.
me too.
But let's bring you back in, our expert, to help us connect the dots.
All right.
So we've covered the ingredients, the
Yes.
traditional uses, the intended benefits, and even the sourcing.
Yeah,
What's the bigger picture here?
right.
What does all of this tell us about the role of traditional herbal remedies in women's health today?
That's a fantastic question. I think this deep dive into 5W really shows us that traditional knowledge is such a valuable resource for our current understanding of health and well-being. For centuries, women have relied on plants to support their reproductive health.
Right.
And many of those traditional uses are now being studied and sometimes even validated by modern scientific research.
So it's not about choosing between traditional wisdom and modern science.
Right.
It's about recognizing the value of both
Yeah.
and finding ways to integrate them.
Exactly. Knowledge comes from many sources, and we can definitely learn from the past,
Yeah.
even as we continue to make new discoveries in the present.
Yeah. And, this specific formula is interesting.
Yeah.
But I think the broader message is about respecting and exploring this ancient wisdom.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This has been a truly fascinating conversation.
It has.
We've explored the traditional uses of these really powerful herbs.
Yes.
We looked at the science behind their potential benefits,
Mm-hmm.
and even touched on the importance of sustainable sourcing.
Yeah.
It feels like we've barely scratched the surface.
I know, right?
I know.
It's been a very enriching deep dive.
It has.
And I hope it's sparked some curiosity in our listeners. There's so much to discover when we start exploring the world of traditional herbal medicine.
I agree. But before we wrap things up completely,
Right.
I want to leave everyone with one final thought to ponder.
Okay.
We've been focusing on the physical benefits of these herbs
Right.
for women's reproductive health.
Yeah.
But what about the mental and emotional aspects?
Oh.
How might these traditional remedies address those dimensions of well-being as well? That's something I'll be thinking about long after this deep dive is over.
Yeah, that's a great point. The mind-body connection is so crucial. And it's something that traditional medicine systems have always recognized.
Yeah, it really makes you realize that true well-being encompasses like every aspect of ourselves.
Right.
Physical, mental,
Yeah.
emotional.
Yeah, totally. And I think that this deep dive has really shown how traditional knowledge, modern science, and the natural world can all kind of come together when it comes to women's health.
It really has been an incredible journey.
It has.
And I want to thank you for guiding us through this fascinating world of 5W and traditional herbal remedies.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine. I always enjoy diving deep into these topics and kind of seeing how they connect to a bigger picture.
Yeah, and to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this exploration of 5W and traditional herbal approaches to women's health.
Yes.
We hope you gained some new insights today.
Yeah.
And maybe even a newfound appreciation for the wisdom of these traditional practices.
Absolutely. And remember, this is just the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole world of knowledge out there waiting to be explored.
So keep asking questions, keep learning,
Yeah.
and keep diving deep into the things that fascinate you.
Yes. Until next time, happy exploring.
We'll see you on our next deep dive adventure.